Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from the Game Theorists on the game Mouse, P.I. for Hire. It's a brand new game that came out pretty recently. It's pretty much your style of hack and slash shooter, but it's set in a noir style city and you play as a mouse detective. But today we're here to see about how there's too much cheese. So let's hop in and see why they're talking about cheese. I actually don't know.
There's too much cheese in Mouse PI. At least that's what IGN seemed to think. But while the internet was
Oh, yeah, of course, because what they say matters. They said there's too much water in frickin' Hoenn.
ripping them to shreds, I wanted to do the math and see if their take was as monstrous as it first seemed, or were they onto something gooder. Hello,
Let's
Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's always a little cheesy no matter how you slice it. Yeah, get ready for a bunch of cheese puns today, theorists, because we're talking about the newly released and
You're already up to 3.
wonderfully punny game, Mouse PI. This thing is just bursting with character. It's stylized like rubber hose cartoons from the 20s and 30s,
It's
much like
beautiful.
Cuphead, but rather than being a platformer, it's a Doom-esque boomer shooter. It also has some pretty great voice acting, and the entire thing
nice.
is hand-drawn.
Everything you see, characters,
That's
weapons,
so
it's
beautiful.
drawn by hand, frame by frame. Everything you see in the game is handcrafted.
In a world where
No wonder it took so damn long. They were talking about this game like maybe 5 years back.
AI keeps threatening to take away artists' jobs, is it any surprise that people were excited for a game that truly celebrates artists? And if you want to celebrate artists here, you can go and grab our 15-year anniversary poster that's linked in the description.
I like
But
that
to top
poster.
it all off, this world is full of mystery and interesting lore to dive into.
Maybe I should
actually had a
watch some
whole
gameplay.
theory lined up about the seedy underbelly of the Mouse PI world that I was super stoked to get into, but apparently not everyone was as excited for this game as I was. In fact, some people thought it was a bit cheesy. Too cheesy. One specific review from IGN has drummed up a bit of controversy in the gaming community. They gave the
figure
game
it
a
out.
6 out of 10 because of, well, a lot of things, but the internet is focused on one thing specifically. The reviewer's complaint of too much
So everything's about
cheese in a
cheese.
game about mice. Although it is nice
Yeah.
to finally have a sequel to Too Much Water, people were tearing them apart like a
Yeah, see, look, this is what I was talking about. Back in 2014, IGN put out a review of a 7.8 Too Much Water. Oh, yep, see, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire right here. Literally saying Hoenn had too much water.
cheese string. Yes, Santi, you are supposed to peel them, not just bite them like an animal. I thought you were the food guy. Anyway, while everyone was taking their
I mean,
turn
it's like a choice. It's like with the Kit Kat ball. Yes, you're meant to break it, but you don't have to. Crunch.
getting their jabs in, my game theory cog started to turn. I wondered, is there, in fact, too much cheese? Or is this
Well, let's
reviewer
find
just
out.
lactose intolerant? It's one thing to feel like there's a lot of cheese in a game, but if you do the math, do the numbers back you up? I mean, reviews should be objective based on facts, not subjective opinions, after
That's
all.
true.
So, don your fedora and trench coats, loyal theorists, because we're about to follow the stench and track down
I just realized the drinks that were on the wall there was actually 2 different types of cheese.
how much cheese is stinking up Mouse PI to see if IGN was justified, or should we never relieve one of their reviews ever again? In
I
Mouse
think
PI
that's
for
full of
Hire,
cheese
you
puns.
play as a private investigator mouse. For hire, if that wasn't obvious. His name is Jack Pepper, which is also a very simple reference to the deliciously spicy cheese, Pepper Jack. The
Oh.
cheese was right under our noses the whole time, guys.
Okay,
this
that's
made me
kind of
look
clever.
even deeper into the names of our major characters. There are 14 characters that appear enough in the game for me to count them as notable, and a lot of their names are just
enough.
cheese puns. You have Cornelius Stilton, named after Stilton cheese, a centuries-old blue cheese from England that apparently was originally served back in the 1700s, riddled with mites and maggots.
Oh.
Okay, I'm starting to understand why people say British food is bad. Another cheese-based character is Steve.
Dude, that's worse than the frickin' beans on toast. I'd rather have that than the cheese. Oh, God, get that off my screen.
Bandel, named after the unique cheese from West Bengal, India. Bandel cheese. There's
Oh,
also Million
okay.
Miles last name. Curd, like curds of cheese. And finally, Professor
curds.
von Haase, an evil German named after a German sour milk. So 6 of the 14
Gross,
main
but okay.
characters have cheesy inspirations to their name, which is about 43% cheesy. That's pretty cheesy, but 1, it's
Yeah, it's
not the
not
majority, and 2, let's be honest, 6 names spread across a 12 to 20 hour game isn't all that much. At most, it's a new cheese every 2 hours. But the names aren't the
Not
only
bad.
place where cheese puns are gonna get jammed down your throat. The main reference to cheese, and what I suspect the IGN reviewer was referencing, was the dialogue. Unfortunately, at the time of writing, there is no script for Mouse PI publicly available. So I played through the game and noted
Script?
down every single line of dialogue. Turns out, the game is about 28,653 words.
Good
Don't
lord.
say I never do anything for you. With this ragtag script in hand, I can now tell you about any and all mentions of cheese that exist. Obviously, there's references to the characters I've already mentioned. Jack
Yeah.
is mentioned 137 times, Pepper is mentioned 28 times, Curd 27 times, Band
Again, though, those are meant to be the character names, so I would say once you're introduced to the character, that would be 1 count for cheese, and every other substantial stance of the name is literally just talking about the character, not the cheese.
is mentioned 13 times, Stilton is mentioned 8 times, and Harzer twice. So far, that's 215 mentions of cheese already. But that feels a little too easy. Of course,
Well,
character
duh.
names are going to be mentioned. What about just pure cheese punnery? Well, the actual word cheese or cheesy appears a whopping 106 times. There's
There you
also
go,
the
now you got
use
it.
of cheddar, which happens 5 times. The reason there are so many instances of these words in particular is because cheese or cheddar is an old-timey slang word for
money.
Something
Yeah.
today's partner Chime knows plenty about. Let's keep counting up some of the other types of cheeses you find in this game. There
The
are plenty
real
of variants
cheese.
to play with too. You have fondue, which is mentioned 17 times.
Yeah, that's
Blue, which
melted
is mentioned
cheese.
11 times.
That's a
Mozzarella
type.
is mentioned 7 times.
another
Brie 4
type.
times, and Gorgonzola is mentioned twice. You
Nice.
also have provolone, Gouda, feta, and Parmesan, which are all mentioned once. All of that together
Yeah.
totals 371 cheese mentions throughout the entire 28,653 words of dialogue. That is a lot of cheese. In fact, that's
It
one
is.
mention of cheese about every 77 words. And since we know that the average person speaks at about 150 words per minute, we can break
That's a
those
lot.
statistics down even further. For about every 1 minute of dialogue, there is 1.94 mentions of cheese. If you mention
Whoa.
cheese that much in every single conversation, I start to get a little bit worried. However, that's only true
That
if the
is
game was
kind of
just
a lot of
dialogue.
cheese.
There's a lot of just running and gunning your way through with very little speaking. In fact, if you were to speak all of this dialogue in one go, the game would be just over 3 hours long. And this thing takes 12 to 20 hours to
Damn.
complete. The dialogue is at most 1/4 of the game, and
Yeah, that's
only
at
1%
most.
of that 25% is cheese. But this still doesn't feel like enough evidence for me. Sure, we've counted words, and that's good fun, but words are just that, words. They're not really tangible as an amount. They don't have any real meaning or weight to them. If I wanted to know if scientifically there was too much cheese, I
Like
needed
actual
to have
cheese,
something
not just
physical.
words.
Something that I could use to compare to the real world. I needed to count the actual size and amount of physical cheese in the game.
Now,
I
we're
didn't
getting
think there'd be
into
all
it.
that much. When I was first playing, I didn't really notice any. I was mostly focused on the magnificent cheese puns. But clearly, that had just overwhelmed my senses because as I went through my gameplay footage, I realized that cheese was basically everywhere.
Wow,
Posters
okay,
were
that's a lot
covered
of
in
cheese.
cheesy references, cheese wheels and slices were dotted around the map. Heck, even the moonshine jugs you see littering Mouseburg are all actually filled with cheese. But I was
Really?
dedicated to the cause at this point, so I
Wow.
started my long journey to counting every single piece of cheese by hand. That's right, I went through the map again and literally counted
Holy.
every single piece. This was
Oh,
going to be
crap,
a
dude.
monumental task. The game is about 24 levels and there is no level replay. Plus, within
Oh,
those levels,
boy.
there are lots of points of no return. Once you get through a section of the map, you're unable to return to it, which is fine in normal gameplay, but not great if you're counting cheese. But I was not deterred. I made a special spreadsheet to track the data, and I got to work. Guys, there are so many kinds of cheese in this game. We've got health cheese, cheese slices, cheese wheels, cheese vents, fondue jugs, antipasto trays.
Okay, wait. I would not count the vents because that's just cheese shape. That's only a cheese shape in metal.
And cigars. Yes, every single cigar you see in the game is actually a cheese stick. I also counted every
What?
time a cheese was mentioned in writing or drawn on a poster, and I found all the unique cheese assets used that don't fit any of the categories I've already mentioned. Finally, if we return to a location at any point, I only counted the new cheese that showed up. Got it? Gouda. I hope you're ready for a
Okay.
lot of numbers, theorists. In the tutorial,
Oh boy,
I
this is gonna be
encountered
big.
66 cheeses. In the next level, Vanishing Act, I got 77 cheeses. There's 44 cheeses in Jack Pepper's office and the attached buildings. I also stopped by one of the various roadhouses and got the cheese count amount in there too, 20. In Bandle's lab, it goes all the way down to 9 cheeses. Wait, was this game really running out of cheese? Oh, by no means, theorists, because then I got to Clergy Row. This level is the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. Around nearly every corner was a new
Holy
cheese
crap.
store filled to the brim with cheese. Every time I thought I was done, boom, more cheese. It
Okay, no one tell Gramas and Wallet about this place. It's too much cheese for them.
was literally endless. Overall, I found 310 cheese slices, 625 cheese wheels, 43 jugs of cheese-legged fondue, 2 antipasto trays, 17 cigars, 10 references to cheese, 2 other miscellaneous cheeses, and 3 health cheeses to top it all off. That totaled to 1,012 cheeses in this level
My
alone.
God.
It was at this moment that I wanted nothing more than to turn back, drop this case forever, and forget I ever decided to make this video at all. But I was in too deep. The world needed to truly know how cheesy Mouse PI was, so I pressed on. I dove straight into the curdled abyss that is Mouseburg. The next level, the old
Here we
Subway,
go.
had 333 cheeses in it. This
Ah,
time
that's a
due
lot
to
of
the
cheese.
absurd amount of cheese legging happening in these Subways. 308 total jugs of the stuff. This may not seem
Damn.
like a lot because, well, anything looks lackluster next to the
Wait, where did the other 25 come from then?
1,012 cheeses I just witnessed, but this is still more cheeses than the first 3 locations combined. The next map is the Tinsel Brothers lot, which had 41 cheeses. Then we went to the Burnt Opera Ruins, and I only counted 2 new cheeses there. Wallet Bay had
okay.
96 cheeses, and Curdsville had 95. I was hoping that these cheese counts would stay nice and low for the sake of my sanity, but this is when we get to the far wetlands, and everything was off the table once again. There is a whopping 787 cheeses in this
Ooh,
map, most of which
so
being wheels,
much.
slices, and of course jugs, because this is another sanctuary for cheese legging. Then we went into the depths where all the shrews were hiding, and we found 282 instances of cheese down there. 223 of those cheeses are jugs once again. Thankfully, that was the last really
Yeah, that's a
cheesy
lot.
map. For the rest of the game, all the
Moon
level
cheese.
cheese counts
Cheese
remain
shine?
under 120, which is great because if I had another level of over 500 cheeses, I was going to have to check myself into the Curdsville nut house along with Jack. So after going through every single level, the grand total cheese I found was, drumroll please, 3,540.
That was a cheese drum.
43 cheeses. 1,330 of those were cheese wheels, 1,037 of those were cheese legging jugs, and 571
Oh my
were
God.
cheese slices. That sounds like a lot of cheese, perhaps.
It
Maybe
is.
even too much cheese. But what do those numbers mean in real world measurements? Well, if you look at just the cheese wheels and slices that we see in the game, each slice of cheese is about 1/4 of a full wheel. So if we divide the slice count by 4, then add that to the cheese wheel count, we get a total of 1,472.75 cheese wheels. Now we just have to determine what type of cheese those
Okay.
cheese wheels are actually made from. Turns out a lot of cheese happens to come in wheel form. But when you get a closer look at the asset
That's
of
almost
the cheese
all.
wheel and their matching slices, we see that these wheels have one defining feature. They have holes in them. Holes in cheese like this are actually called eyes, and they are created
Oh,
due to a
didn't know
bacteria in the cheese producing CO2 during the cheese making process. They're present mostly in Swiss and Dutch cheese styles. Additionally, the cheese wheels in the
okay.
game seem to melt really well, since they're used for cheese legging, and we literally see one of these wheels partially melted
Look
in
at
the game.
that.
The way this melts plus the holes makes it look like one specific type of cheese. Swiss raclette. You know, the one you've probably seen in those viral cheese scraping videos. I mean,
That's what that is. Ah, thank you. I always wondered what kind of cheese they were using. I just thought it was basic ass cheddar.
just look at how that cheese melts. My gosh! Plus, raclette rind typically is slightly darker and way more textured than the light creamy cheese inside, which is very similar to the cheese we see in the game. Raclette wheels
makes
typically have
so
a
much
diameter of about
sense.
15 inches and weigh roughly 18 pounds each, meaning the cheese in the game would weigh about 26,500 pounds or 13.25 tons. If
Holy
you lined
crap.
up these wheels next to each other, they would stretch over 4 whole miles. Now, these
Holy
calculations
crap.
only account for 53% of all the cheese we can see in the game, but it doesn't really matter that we haven't counted all of the others, because the truth is, this is too much cheese if you're a mouse. For ages, it's been generally believed that mice love cheese. Scholars believe the idea originated back in the Middle Ages, back when people used to store food in caves or cellars, both of which mice had easy access to compared to the meat that was hanging on hooks.
Which
And the
makes
wheels
sense.
were only protected by a thin coating of wax or cheesecloth. So peasants would return to
Yep.
their meager cheese caves and find the wheels had been nibbled on. But the thing is,
Nibble,
this
nibble,
stereotype was built entirely entirely on lies. In reality, mice don't actually eat cheese. A healthy diet for mice
Really?
is actually made up of nuts, grains, and dried fruit. If they're raiding your pantry, they're not looking for cheese, they're looking for foods that are high in carbs. Something like dried
Okay.
pasta or a bar of chocolates. In fact, some cheeses can even be dangerous to mice. They
Oh,
don't
damn.
have molars to break down food, so if you feed them a soft, gooey cheese like brie, they could choke on it and die. This game
Oh,
definitely
shit.
has too much cheese. All the mice we see in this game should be dead, especially our little PI friend who is downing the stuff for a health boost. But if you're a human reviewer, I mean, we have 1.4 billion pounds of cheese in the US cheese caves alone. And last year, the US
That's
sold
true.
14
And yes, that is also true about the cheese caves. We literally have caves just for all cheese.
billion pounds of cheese. Suddenly, 26,000 pounds doesn't seem like all that much, does it? But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for
and that's
watching.
it.
World premiere on Game.
Alright everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.